Hi, I'm Katy Jones and welcome to the Red Manor House Block of the Month quilt with the Quilters Guild. We're on block 11, can you believe it? Month 11 of this. This has gone so quickly and I think it's been the perfect project for these strange times with lockdown and everything that's been going on. It's kind of couldn't have fallen on a better time. So this time we have the flying geese from the final border. And flying geese, I think, really do help to frame a quilt. Those and half square triangles are probably two of my absolute favourite building blocks for using in quilts. They never fail to look great and they're perfect for using up scraps, which I love. And we've got a really great method this time with foundation paper piecing. Now, it's a lovely simple foundation paper piecing. You're literally just following the numbers, sewing by numbers, a little bit like painting by numbers, but we are just sewing. Now we've already done foundation paper piecing, so we've already got a video on that, and I didn't want to recap because it's basically the same. You're following the same method as we did in the arrow block from earlier on. So I thought, what could we do that's slightly different, but a good technique to learn? And then I thought, no waste flying geese. That's a great one to learn, and it's one of those that once you've done it the first time, you think, well, why haven't I done this always? So you are going to be making 4 flying geese, 4 sets, 4 little units from 5 squares, from 1 big square and 4 little squares. Now that in itself is just magical, because how does that work? There's literally no waste, there's no trimming afterwards. So you do need to be quite perfect with your seam allowance and your sewing. So just kind of make a couple of practice blocks, have a little bit of a practice run, make sure that you've got your 1/4 inch seam allowance spot on your sewing machine, and then crack on with this. Once you've done it, I know that you're going to use it again and again and again. So let's get started. Now the beauty of the no waste flying geese method is that you can do 4 units at once with minimal cuts and you're not using foundation paper piecing. So you want to start off with a 5.5 inch square and then 4 3-inch smaller squares. Those. You take your big square, and you do need to be quite precise with your sewing on this one. So if you're not so great at your seam allowances, then I would say give the foundation paper piecing a try. But if you want to try something different, and it's always good to learn a new skill, try this out, because even if you don't use it for this quilt in particular, I think you will use it again. So we're going to line those up right sides together and then draw a diagonal line right down the center here. Pin those in place and then sew 1/4 inch, very exact 1/4 inch either side of the marked line. Once you've sewn your lines, then just cut along the marked line and you end up with this. It still doesn't look too much like flying geese, but you've got your sewn lines, your marked line that you've cut off, and you're going to end up with these 2 half triangles. Now, open out and give it a good press, and then on each unit, you're going to place another one of your squares, your smaller squares, and you're going to pop that there. You've got a marked line going from the centre diagonally. Do that on both units in exactly the same place, and then sew again a 1/4 inch either side. Then once you've sewn a 1/4 inch either side, you're going to cut along the marked line, give it a press, and you'll end up with 2 units per block. But I'm going to sew those and then show you the result as I'm sewing them. Right, so we've got our unit here. I've pinned it in place and you can see that there's the mark line going down the middle. And I'm just going to sew 1/4 of an inch either side. You want to make sure that your 1/4 of an inch is nice and precise. So just measure it before you set off sewing. Sew a line, a mark against a march line, and just measure just to make sure that you know where your 1/4 of an inch setting is. Because every machine is ever so slightly different, and when you've sewn, it's a little bit like a car. If you haven't had your machine serviced for a while, your 1/4 of an inch can be ever so slightly out, and it only needs to be a fraction out to make a difference, especially when you're sewing a lot of things, a lot of geese like this. So that's the first unit there sewn. I'm going to trim that in a second. And again with the next one, this is quite a good way to use up the scraps. You can make your geese quite scrappy. I know that a lot of you have got quite scrappy and colourful quilts that would work really well with this method. You know, if you're not wanting things to be as uniform. The foundation paper piecing method is possibly the easiest. It's the easiest foundation paper piecing that you'll ever do, and it is just sewing by numbers, a little bit like painting by numbers, but you're sewing by numbers, and you get very, very precise blocks. So if you're wanting, if you're not so confident with your seams, with your seam allowance, or your cutting, then I would definitely go for the foundation paper piecing method. So we're just going to trim along on right on the marked line. I just used just a normal pencil to mark my lines because it's not going to show. You're basically going to kind of cut it out when you cut on it, and so rather than, I'm going to say, wasting the use of my more expensive marking pen, I use a pencil. I'm tight. I'm from Yorkshire, you know, we like to save money. So when you've got your unit there, just give it a press out, and there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's number 4. So that, there's no waste there. The only thing that I'm going to probably just trim off with a little pair of scissors is the dog ear at the top, but other than that, and you can actually, if you press your seam in the opposite direction, you don't even need to trim that off. But there's literally no waste at all, so there's no trimming down after you've made your blocks. It's a really nice method, and I think it's something that you'll probably use quite a lot. Whether you choose to use it in this quilt for all of the borders here, maybe try a little bit of both. Try the foundation paper piecing. If you want a refresher on that, we've already done foundation paper piecing before, obviously, so you can just head back to the arrow block earlier on, and you can learn all about foundation paper piecing if you need just a little bit of refresher. But otherwise, give your no waste geese method a try. Maybe even go fully scrappy with these blocks. They'd be great, wouldn't they, if you cut the 3-inch squares and did all different little background pieces to go with against, you know, a bright, colourful goose. I don't know which one is it. Which one is the goose and which one is the wings? But which one is the flying bit? So this bit, the pointy bit, you could have all different brightly coloured fabrics, and then you could use loads of different background fabrics for the squares. It's a great way to use up scraps. So that's the very last block that we've got for the Red Manor House block of the month. I've had an absolutely fantastic time being with you and showing you how to do the different techniques, and I know that the rest of the designers and teachers have really enjoyed it as well. Can't wait to see your final borders and get these quilts finished.